I think we'll just start out, just tell a little bit about what's your journey with customized learning been like this year? What things have you struggled with? What have been some high points? Just tell us a little bit about this year.
Okay, I started with doing choice boards.
Mhm.
That was kind of how I dove into it. And first semester I did pretty much all choice. I had a few things that they had to do specifically, but pretty much all choice. And some kids really ran with it, and some kids really struggled with it. And so I took a step back, and this semester my choice boards are more structured, I guess, would be the word. And so they have some choices, but fewer than they did the first part of the school year. So, and that seems to be going a little bit better, just more direct instruction and a little bit less of student-led instruction.
So how do you handle direct instruction? It's a lot of it still you in front of the students, or have you found some other ways for kids to learn about something new that they didn't know before?
I've always been big into group activities, so I incorporate a lot of group projects, group research, and that kind of stuff. Usually, if I'm doing direct instruction, it starts out with me at the beginning of class just as an introduction, and then guiding them through the process of student, and then it switches to student-led.
How do you structure the student collaborative activities, the grouping?
Generally, I put the groups together myself ahead of time just to make sure students are working with other students that they can be successful with and learn from. So always try to put a leader in the group, always try to just group them in a way that's best for their learning, I guess. So.
Do you find some students adapt to customized learning better than other students?
Yeah, definitely. What I've found is the kids that generally do really well in school and the kids that generally need quite a bit of help have struggled more with the customized in my room. Mostly because I think the kids that generally do well were just used to that strict classroom structure and everything linear. And so they struggled with it, but they're getting it now. So they're doing a lot better now with it. But at the beginning, it kind of blew their mind a little bit. They were pretty scared with it. But now that they've kind of grasped it a little bit better, it's going better. The lower level kids, or the kids that struggle a little bit, we haven't thrown pacing in yet. And so that's what's made it tough with them, is providing choices that still meet the standards, but also that they're able to do well. So that mastery, I guess, trying to get that mastery has been tough for those particular kids.
So with science, are there some unique challenges in working with science in a customized environment?
Yeah, the lab part of it has been tough. It's much easier to do a lab as a class where it's more structured versus some kids doing, one activity and other kids working on a separate activity. And so as far as materials and getting them all organized and keeping the kids organized and on task has been a little bit difficult with the lab portion of it. But they're adapting. I'm adapting.
Do you find setting up a customized environment to be a lot of work for you as a teacher?
Absolutely, yeah. But once I get it set up, then it's more fun because then I can go around to each group of kids, students, and help them in their small group. But the upfront work is a lot.
So would you say that you do spend more time individually in small groups with kids than you would have in a traditional system?
Absolutely, yeah.
Does that change your relationship with kids?
I would definitely agree with that, yeah. It just makes it more personal, I think, for them. They feel like they're getting more one-on-one time. So, and I like that too, because then I can kind of drive the questioning and their thought process a little bit and get a little deeper understanding.
So how has your role as a teacher changed in that changing environment?
Well, I don't do lecture notes or anything like that anymore, so that's changed completely. I never did a lot of that, but I would always throw it in there. And so it's just more student-led, and less teacher-led, and I'm more of a helper's not the word I'm looking for, but I just help them figure out, problem solve, basically. Help them learn and offer them, my expertise in the meantime, but it's putting it more on their shoulders, which
Sure.
has been good.
Do you find that, in particular, where you're kind of dealing with kids who've already been groomed in a traditional system now coming into here, how do you get kids to transform to that becoming more self-responsible for their learning? Are there activities or things you need to do with the kids to get them ready for that?
Yeah, I definitely think we dove in a little bit too fast this year with that part of it, because they've been spoon-fed, it feels like. So that's one thing that we've been discussing, is how we can get them more self-motivated and less reliant on us telling them what they need to do and when they need to do it. And the choice board thing I have on Schoology has, I think, helped with that. It seems to have, because they know that when they're finished with one activity, they just move on to the next. And if they're done, then I have optional activities that they can do to get a deeper understanding. And so they know there's always more for them to do in my class. It doesn't necessarily have to have a due date for them to get it done. And that's been really hard for a lot of the kids. Well, when is this due? Well, all of this is due eventually, but I want you to work somewhat at your own pace, but also just to work continuously and try to get mastery. So,
for people outside of customized learning, they often see due dates as an absolute necessary learn responsibility of getting things in on time. What's been your experience, though, when you have a little bit more flexible due dates? Do kids still learn responsibility in that situation, or?
Most of them do. Like I said, it's going to take some time for some of them that are so used to waiting till the last minute. They're procrastinating, waiting till the last minute to get it done until they see it on their, list of things that are due. So, yeah, for the most part, I feel like they're doing pretty well, but there are definitely a handful of students that struggle with the lack of due dates. So.
Have you had any true success stories with students where it just seems like there's a new student in front of you now? They've really latched on and moved forward in a way they wouldn't have before?
Yeah, I have one in particular. She's always asking me, what else can I do? What is there more? And so I'm constantly, honestly, my planning is mostly for her. There's one other student, just trying to find them more so they can get a deeper understanding of what they're learning. And which is fun. It's a little bit time consuming, but it's fun for me that they're excited about science and they're excited about learning, and they want to learn more. They're asking me for more assignments. I don't have to beg them to do it.
Sure.
So.
Now you've got kind of a mixed grade level situation with 7th and 8th grade. How do you do that? How do you plan for having a mix of 7th and 8th graders?
I really haven't had to change much, surprisingly. We kind of know where they're at reading level wise. And so, that hasn't changed. I mean, if I have all 7th graders in a classroom, I still have various different levels of learning going on. So, it really hasn't changed my way of teaching much, other than, you obviously want to differentiate instruction a little bit, but I've always done that, so.
Do you find when you mix age levels of kids, I think sometimes there's certain stigmas about, well, you're working at a 5th grade level as opposed to 7th grade, or 8th graders are doing 7th grade work, or is that kind of disappear in the wash as you bring all the kids together working together? At
the beginning, they were kind of in shock, and it was the 8th graders that didn't want to work in the same room as the 7th graders, but that was maybe for 2 weeks, and since then, in my class, we don't have them leveled or anything like that. They're just basically just mixed, and I group them accordingly in the classroom. And I haven't had any any complaints, I guess, with that.
So how do you handle the content then? Do you kind of do alternating things one year to the next so that 8th graders don't get any repetition, or how do you deal with that?
Yeah, so this year I'm doing earth science. Next year I'll do life science, and we're in the process of transitioning earth to 6th grade. So this is actually the last year I will teach earth science. And then next year I'll teach life science, and then the following year I'll teach physical and life. So life will be 7th and physical will be 8th. So yeah, we just plan on alternating like that, I guess, which for our kids that stay in the district is great, but we do have a lot of kids that transfer, so I'll be interested to see how that works if they transfer in and they're in 8th grade and they're taking physical science at another school and I'm teaching life. That's one thing that I'm not sure how it's going to work.
Okay.
If we'll be able to keep with the mixed classes or not.
How has that worked with transient population that comes in and out? What are the challenges in a customized environment, and what are ways that actually customized works better in that situation?
One way it's worked better, not necessarily in science, but with language arts and math, is we test them when they get here to see where they're at. And then those classes are more leveled based on where they're at. And so they're not just thrown in with a whole bunch of 8th graders. If they're an 8th grader, if they really need that lower level support, they're put in that class. So that's been, and then we know, in social studies and science what their reading levels are. And so we can group them accordingly within our classrooms too, and assign them, the work that challenges them but doesn't over-challenge them, I guess.
So how do you, in your own mind, determine what a student needs? In the traditional system, we got to go through this content and it's going to be delivered whether you're ready or not. How do you try to determine individual student needs? How do you go about doing that?
I like to give a pre-test for each student, so I can kind of see where they're at as far as background knowledge.
These are like unit level kind of tests?
Unit tests, yep. And then I really haven't had too much of a difference in the students as far as like gaps or anything. A lot of them have already had earth science, and so I've been able to dig a lot deeper with the content and skip a few things too, which is nice because then you can go deeper with specific things. But yeah, I guess that's the pre-test, and then observing, questioning, that kind of thing, making sure they're getting it as they're going.
Yeah. So what's your personal journey been like through all this?
Well, first of all, my background's in social studies.
Oh.
This is my second year teaching science. So I'm learning with them as far as, the content I know, but I'm still learning a little bit. And so it's been fun for me to learn with them, obviously, but also learn how to teach differently. I like to learn. I read. I've taken I don't know how many classes. So my journey has just been trying to figure out how they learn best. And Customized seems to be like we're on the right track with meeting all the students' needs.
So what appeals to you the most? What is it about customized learning that draws you?
I like the pacing end of things. We haven't gotten to that yet, but where we have so many kids at so many different levels, reading levels in particular, and math. I like the pacing where they actually have to master something before they move on. And so, like in some of the math classes, I know they've been a little bit frustrated because they're taking a little bit longer than they normally do, but the kids are actually getting it before they're moving on. And I really like that. I don't like that they just do enough to get by, to get that C or D or even a B. They actually have to master it, and then they'll move on.
So how do you measure mastery as opposed to percentages? Have you made any transitions to move toward mastery as opposed to you just got a 65, move on?
I do. In my personal classroom, I do a lot of rubrics. I've created a lot of rubrics to help me know when they've mastered a specific standard or concept that I want them to learn. So that's what I've done in my classroom. And then I know with the other classes, we have a lot of testing and things that go on, and a lot of those results are aligned to specific skills, and whether they're proficient or basic or whatever. So,
Do you find you do more of a performance-based type of assessment as opposed to just fill out a test worksheet?
yeah, I've never been a worksheet teacher, so I learn better hands-on. And so that's kind of how I've always taught. And so, yeah, my rubrics are not a checklist of things they need to do. Put your name on the paper, hand it in at this time. It's they're actually doing something. What they're showing me that they know what they're learning.
So do you find that you're more skills-based?
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely.
Do you find the students are ready for more of a performance and skills-based kind of learning as opposed to just give me the content so I can take the test?
Depends on the student. At the beginning of the year, I had one student who he said, "Why can't we just do worksheets?" I said, "Because we're not going to do busy work. I want you to learn specific skills that you can carry on to your other science classes." And now he's really doing a lot better. But at the beginning, he was just like, this is so hard. I just want to do worksheets. And so you have that. But for the most part, most of the kids really like the skills versus a checklist of exactly what all they need on their poster or whatever they need.
So is there anything that we should have talked about here that we didn't cover? Are there things that you've learned from this that you'd rather tell about that?
I guess the biggest thing I've learned is that one size doesn't fit all. And all of our kids are so different. All of our students are so different. And there's so many different ways you can go about teaching each student. And with customized, you can customize based on their needs. And so that's really been eye-opening and helpful. And I hope to learn more, I guess.
All right, did you guys have any other
I might
questions?
have one thing.
Okay.
We had a student and actually one teacher talk about the student-led parent-teacher conferences.
Yeah.
And just wondering from your perspective, what that's like for you and what you think it does for the parents, what you think it does for the students. I'll let you direct your
All right.
question to Lenny so we don't do the same.
I really like the student-led parent-teacher conferences, and the parents seem to really like it too. The students were very apprehensive. Why do we have to come? That's parent-teacher conference. It's not student-teacher conference. But I feel like it really does put that responsibility on them, and they don't get that often enough. They don't have to take responsibility for what they're doing in their learning. So some of the students were really excited to come in with their teacher, but most of them were like, I don't know what to say, or they were nervous. And so I'll be interested to see this next time around how it goes.
Sure.
But the first time went really well. So.
Excellent. All right. Well, thank you so much for